Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Battle of the Labyrinth by Rick Riordan. The Battle of the Labyrinth is the fourth book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, and continues with that kind of more serious, darker tone that began in the third one. Percy Jackson in this book is a freshman, he's 14 years old, and really the main plot of the story is that he and his friends are trying to save Camp Half-Blood from an impending invasion by the army of the Titan Lord Kronos through the means of the Labyrinth, which is basically this great underground world that exists underneath the United States. So Battle of the Labyrinth continues to be just a very well-written book. Rick Riordan continues to prove that he is an excellent writer, partly just because, the stakes are very clear, the story is very, fast-paced, the world building is amazing. But the thing that really struck me with this book is just how much time Riordan gives to Percy's emotions. Throughout the novel, we, the readers, know what Percy's emotions are because Riordan makes it very clear through Percy's telling of the story. When Percy is really happy to see his friends and, we know that. When he gets really confused about things, we understand why he's confused. When there are really bad things happening, whether Percy gets scared or is upset by them, we get some time to actually sit and focus on those emotions. And it's really refreshing to see, especially when you consider maybe compared to other series that were written around the same time frame. Percy being a male protagonist and actually showing that emotion, I think is a really positive kind of representation for just boys to see that, considering how many stories, boys get told, oh, don't show emotion, don't show emotion. Here, Percy shows emotions, and it's not criticized. He's not made fun of because he's showing emotion. It's considered like, yes, that's the natural thing, that is okay. And so I really appreciate that. Then obviously from the other side of things, just from the story side of things, it's also really well done just in that it gives us a good frame for where Percy is at all times. At no point was I ever confused about, what's Percy's motivation here? How is Percy feeling? Like, it's always like, no, I understand exactly how he's feeling. I know what his motivations are. And it allowed me to really be immersed in the story. Unfortunately, there is something really problematic in this book that we need to talk about, and it's a little bit of a spoiler. So, if you haven't read the book and aren't interested and want to read it first, pause here and then come back. Now, if you have read The Battle of the Labyrinth, then you know that around kind of the midpoint of the story, after Percy explodes a mountain, he ends up on an island with the goddess Calypso. Now, in Greek mythology, Calypso is the daughter of the Titan Atlas, and we really only know about her through Homer's Odyssey, where Odysseus ends up on her island, and Calypso forces him to stay there. And it isn't until, at the behest of Zeus, the god Hermes comes and, basically orders Calypso to let Odysseus leave, and after 7 years of building a boat, and everything like that, Odysseus finally leaves, and that's Calypso's story for the most part. And so obviously in the Odyssey, Calypso is this villainous figure. We are not supposed to care for her, really. We're not supposed to sympathize with her. She is a villainous person who is actively hurting the hero of the story. Now, in typical Rick Riordan fashion, he takes that original story and kind of twists it a little bit. So instead of being this villainous, horrible person, Calypso is still a daughter of Atlas. She's still immortal and everything like that, but she is trapped on the island of Ogygia. It's basically her prison, more or less, determined by the gods. And Percy arrives there, and just like every other demigod or demigoddess who arrives on her island, Calypso falls in love with him. Because the gods effectively or the fates effectively send demigods and demigoddesses who Calypso will always fall in love with, who she can't help but fall in love with. And so in here, she's fallen in love with Percy. Percy kind of likes her. It's kind of like he maybe respects her at least. But instead of forcing him to stay, once Percy has kind of come to this conclusion that he has to leave, he has to go and help his friends once he's recovered, she allows him to leave, like, very peacefully. It's very sad because as she says, no hero who leaves can ever return. Percy says he's going to find a way to help her, but he leaves knowing that he can't help her. And so, from that basis, it seems like, okay, not so terrible, seems okay. Until you think about the fact that Calypso is this immortal, thousands of years old goddess, and Percy is a 14-year-old boy. And look, as far as like problematic age gaps and love stories and stuff like that, this is not the most problematic of those, because like it's never even implied that anything happens between them. Again, she allows him to leave when he makes that decision that he wants to go. It isn't terrible, all things considering. It's just kind of weird that was the direction Riordan chose to go with this, is having a thousands years old goddess fall in love with a 14-year-old boy. It just is a little creepy, and maybe he could have, maybe Calypso instead could have just been like motherly. That would have been more okay if it was like she just wants to care for Percy in like a motherly fashion instead of like falling in love with him. It's just kind of weird, and especially knowing then how Riordan attempts to handle that story later on in a sequel series, it doesn't really get much better. So yeah, that's just kind of, it's probably one of the most problematic things in all of the Percy Jackson series, at least as far as I can remember. With that being said, The Battle of the Labyrinth is still a fantastic read. It continues, with the high-stakes, fast-paced storytelling that Riordan excels at, while still taking the time to give us deep, meaningful character moments. So, yeah.